Module 4, the exercises. I'll be showing you 3 examples of my own paper sculpture based on my photo walk. They represent 3 different approaches to using the paper as sculpting material. I start with cutting one of my textured surfaces into strips. I've used a guillotine to do this, but scissors are fine. I've tried to cut them in equal width. You can see how quickly new patterns emerge by mixing up the strips together. I'm using the strips to interpret the dried grass image. I can immediately see how paper strips can be used to mimic the shape and direction of each section of the grasses. To give a bit of structure and rigidity to each strip, I fold down the middle of each strip and then fold again at different intervals down the length of the paper. I use tape to fix each strip together to build up the picture of a collection of grasses echoing the direction and scale of the original grasses in the picture. These shapes make great silhouettes and shadows when they're photographed with different light sources, creating new imagery for developing in a later module. This next image of the bridge shows how I will use the paper strips again, but this time to interpret a man-made structure. I cut a series of paper strips and fold them again down the middle. And I lay them onto the white background, finding a way to copy the original composition of the lines in the image. I use black tape and fix the strips together. I'm not worried about the tape being seen. I'm more interested in capturing the overall shape of the bridge. I tear flat sections of other pieces of paper to add to the structure to suggest further parts of the bridge. By using the textured surfaces as a paper source, the sculpture has an immediate drawn feel to it, which I like. The next approach to using the paper is about looking at form within the image. This photo of concrete blocks dictates that I should try forming 3D boxes with my paper. I decide to create a net of the box to create the 3D shape. This means drawing the plan of the box onto the paper and cutting out the shapes, which can be then folded up and connected using tape. I do all this by eye, not worried about being very accurate at this stage, so I don't use a ruler. I make a series of boxes in this way to mimic the composition of the boxes and the surfaces in the picture. I then go on to make a series of mini boxes to create the detail seen in the picture here, where one block has a collection of what looks like pyramids over the surface. I decide to make them more simply than this and make a series of small boxes that I can place on top of the larger box. Remembering this is just an interpretation of the image, it doesn't need to be a direct copy. Here's my video of making the mini boxes using tracing paper and stitching by hand to join the sides together. My next box I decide to create using tracing paper to add variety, and I know will photograph well against light. I add string inside the box to represent the shadow of the wall seen in this image. I stitch the sides of the tracing paper together, which is pinned in place first to hold the sides in place as I sew. The stitching is just another way to assemble the paper and can give more strength and structure to your paper box, but tape will work just as well too. My last example of using paper is with a focus on texture. This image shows an interesting variety of texture on the surface of the block and a good contrast in light and dark areas. I decide to use low relief paper sculpture to capture these qualities. I use more of the textured surfaces from Module 2 as my source material. I cut lots of small circular shapes with scissors which can be placed together on a surface. I want to suggest a 3D texture, so I use the tape to make each circular shape sit up from the paper rather than lie flat. You can see as the shapes build up, there is a lovely variety of light and shadow on the new 3D surface. The painted texture of each circle giving an added texture. I place the circles in different directions to give an organic and random feel. Here's an overview of the low relief paper collage as I add other sections with different folds and textures. Some of these I stitch into the paper and some are attached with tape. All these 3D textures on the surface will photograph well with various lighting and camera angles. If I turn the work over and backlight it, you can see how a whole new effect is created through the texture and colour of the tape and the holes and lines of the stitching. So your 3D sketches may have multiple ways to be seen and documented at a later stage. These are just 3 ideas that emerged from my own imagery. Yours might suggest a whole range of other ways of using the paper. I offer these examples as inspiration and a reminder of the multiple approaches to using paper. So good luck and have fun, and I'll see you in the next module.